Good morning, everybody. This is Paul Schneebus, Executive Director of Ingenuity. Thank you for joining us today for our All Partner Meeting. Welcome to the Ingenuity's 2020 All Partner Meeting, the gathering of the leaders, creators, and innovators and teachers from Chicago's 1,200 museums, cultural institutions, performance companies, and community-based arts and cultural nonprofits, large and small, across Chicago. All of you share the common bond of bringing your immeasurable creative resources into our city schools and our classrooms each year, expanding and deepening the creative learning experience for more than 380,000 students. Thank you for all of your time and work in investing your creativity, your energy, your resources, and your instructional brilliance into the youth of our city. This is our 8th All Partner Meeting, and amazingly, Ingenuity's 10th year of work to create equitable arts access for all CPS students. Over these past 10 years, it's been my great professional privilege to work side by side with all of you and to witness the ever-expanding drive, tenacity, commitment, and creative wonder born out of your work. In addition to all of you, I'd be remiss if I didn't start by also thanking some of our most valued partners in these efforts. To begin, the CPS Department of Arts Education, led by Julia de Betancourt and her amazing team, who work with us so diligently and so willingly to make all these strides happen for CPS students. Thank you to all of you. It's been a pleasure to work with you and continues to be so. To CPS Leadership, Dr. Jackson, Chief Latanya McDade, Chief Chavarria, who's joining us today, our leaders and friends from DCASE, Commissioner Kelly, Deputy Commissioner Aaron Harkey, Melanie Wong, and the whole team who strive also to elevate arts education in our schools each year, and of course, Mayor Lightfoot and her team in City Hall. Typically, this annual meeting has been the grounding day for us in the Chicago arts education sector. It's the time each year where we come together with a chance to explore as a community what gains have been made on behalf of our students, what work still needs to be done, what gaps still require closing, what groundbreaking work has occurred, and simply to learn from each other and be together. It goes without saying that 2020 has been a year unlike any other we've seen in our lifetimes, but particularly those of our students. The impacts of the COVID pandemic, alongside our nation's racial and cultural imperatives, both deeply and directly inform our collective work and require us to think and rethink our understanding of what true educational and racial equity look like, and what our responsibilities are and what we bear to ensure they become real. You'll hear more about Ingenuity's own efforts and our steps later this morning. Within these challenges, though, what has been so encouraging to me is how the Chicago arts sector has responded with its trademark resourcefulness, your creative savvy, and your hallmark Midwestern determination. Today, you will hear phrases like radical flexibility, knowledge sharing, and how they can lead us to equity for our students. This year, of all years, is when we, Chicago arts and cultural sector, remind people of what we're made of. Show our city how the arts will always be the bind that ties us as a community and the beacon that leads us forward when most needed. Thank you for your work, your unending creativity, for the light you provide to all of us, and for your commitment to the brilliant young people in our city. Before we get started, let's take a moment to find out who's here today among us. On your screen, you'll see a poll asking you to identify yourself and what role you play in your organization or your arts or the arts sector. I'll take a moment while you respond. We have, for your knowledge, more than about 200 attendees today from agencies large and small across our city, so thank you for coming. We have a lot of wonderful leadership in the room, it looks like today. Particularly thank you to all the executive directors and artistic directors who made the time in your day to attend, especially other board members here as well of organizations, and look at the program staff leadership that's here. Thank you for all of the brilliant program directors and teaching artists who use your brilliance and creativity to come in and create just amazing programs year in, year out for our students, all the hardworking fundraising staffs in each of these organizations that are to put the fuel in the tank to help us do all of our work. And thank you especially to the CPS teachers who I see are here today for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to being with you and sharing out all of our work together as a community today. As we get moving, I would also like to welcome my staff here. We have a really wonderful growing team at Ingenuity. It's just my pleasure to work with. I'll start with our data and research team. As you all know, data is the backbone of what Ingenuity does as an organization and in service of all that you do. Steve Schufelt has been running our work for many years now. We're grateful to have him here. And 3 newcomers on our team, Patrick Payne, Rebecca Perdomo, and Lillian Wang are all here joining us today. Thank you to the data team for all that you do. In addition to that, we have our partnerships and professional learning team, who many of you will know by face and name really quickly. Nicole Upton, our brilliant leader, along with Courtney Centrone, one of the wonderful voices in our organization who brings so much to the table for our work. In addition to our partnerships and professional learning team, we have our policy and communications team that's comprised of Jackie Rogers and Louisa Wyatt, who send all those terrific, timely messages, updates, awareness, alerts for action to all of you and keep us bound and united as a community through their messaging and communications. And last but not least, to the team that helps us all stay alive and keep us going. Oh, sorry, the Creative Schools Fund as well. Eli Cole, and newly joining us, Ola Folletti. Many of you who are interested and have been applying to the Creative Schools Fund will recognize these names very quickly. Thank you, and hats off to this team, and as well as to the development and operations team, Christopher Chanson, Brianna Hernandez, and Tashia Fauch, who make it a joy and a pleasure and create the ability for all of us to work together. Lastly, I'd also like to thank the board of directors at Ingenuity. In particular, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to Francie Harrington, our board chair, Elaine Tinberg, our vice chair, and all the other wonderful contributors to our board who make it possible to be at Ingenuity and make it a terrific place to work. Thank you to everyone. Well, let's dive in, and without further ado, I would like to go back and reintroduce Nicole Upton, our Director of Partnerships and Professional Learning here at Ingenuity, who has been just the visionary and vocal leader of our work, our direction, and our strategy for so many years. It's been my pleasure to have her. Thank you, Nicole, for everything you do. And I look forward to spending the morning with all of you. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Paul, for those great introductions and opening remarks. I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. Our mission, as many of you know, at Ingenuity has always been about arts education equity for every student in every grade and every school. And each year we strive to make this meeting, our all partner meeting, a call to action for all of us, for the arts education sector, a framing of how we can collaborate to make this vision a reality. And while Chicagoans tend to take things in stride, the challenges of this year have certainly heightened the need for all of us to work together to ensure the future of arts education in Chicago public schools. Solving these challenges requires coordination, collaboration, and creative imagination at scales we have not yet had the opportunity to test. The Arts Ed Response Collaborative, or ARC as we call it, was formed to address the immediate challenges of COVID-19 and to understand the challenges facing the arts education sector on the ground so that we could really develop a collective vision and action plan for addressing those key issues and securing the future of arts education in Chicago. As we began that collective work, the reality facing your arts organizations and arts organizations all across the country became very, very clear and began to emerge with frightening speed. Arts organizations are enormously impacted by the subsequent economic downturn the pandemic has caused. Earned revenues have dried up due to canceled seasons, canceled exhibitions, and some donor priorities have shifted. There are also few certainties about what the next year holds for all of us. I know we just heard this morning that Broadway announced yet another extension of their opening to June. So while we were adjusting to those new health and economic realities of COVID-19, the police murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and Tony McDade amplified the disparities rooted in systemic racism that were already becoming apparent through the pandemic. This cumulative national trauma and mobilization to protest injustice are interwoven with the arts sector's collective responsibility to critically examine the role that we play in creating and maintaining systems that drive inequity. So in addition to starting a school year that will undoubtedly require ongoing flexibility through change and leveraging our collective assets and knowledge to meet students where they are now, we're also evaluating that mission in a new light, questioning whether the arts and whether arts equity can be sustained in a world in which racial equity is still out of reach. The challenges of this year heighten the need for all of us to work together to ensure the future of arts education in Chicago public schools. This generation of students and those who follow them depend on our absolute commitment to this cause. It's with this framing and context that we begin our morning together. We're so glad that you are taking the time out of your very busy day and life to be here. And we promise a quick moving and information-filled morning. We understand that some of you might be coming and going. All of these materials will be available for viewing and access later. So here's what's on deck. After a few more opening remarks, we'll hear from and have a chance to engage with both Julia de Betancourt, the Director of Arts Education, and Sherly Chavarria, Chief of Teaching and Learning at CPS. The Department of Arts Education is under the Chief's leadership. And after taking an arts break, which we're really excited to share with you, we'll reconvene for your choice of a 30-minute breakout session. Again, don't worry, they'll all be accessible later. So if you're really having a hard time deciding, hopefully that just defrays your worry a little bit. We'll take another arts break and then we'll reconvene as a whole group for our annual hot topics to really answer your most pressing and urgent questions right now. Throughout the morning, I invite you to please use the chat to connect with us and to connect with others. And we'll also plan on using the Q&A feature for our conversations with our CPS colleagues. Okay, so let's get to it. I've already provided you with a context and the ARC backdrop. The leading actions that were developed over the course of the last several months have happened in collaboration with multiple stakeholders in our arts education sector, including many of you as arts partners. We also heard from CPS teachers, CPS students, principals, network chiefs, philanthropic leaders, and others to ensure that we were really proactively hearing about those challenges on the ground and identifying areas of priority action. All of this work has been leading to this final report. So we're going to spend a few minutes unpacking each of the 3 leading ARC recommendations and actions to explore what they mean for the sector, what they mean for your organizations, and what they mean for Ingenuity. The first guiding principle is radical flexibility, but what exactly does that mean? We're hearing that word flexibility quite a lot lately. The last several months have challenged and changed everything. We can't expect to return to normal. I think we're beyond normal right now. The arts education sector's future must be built from here by all of us to ensure and protect arts education. We'll do this through both experimentation and risk, celebrating failure, sharing best practices, and committing to focusing on solutions despite the uncertain landscape. How can we map all of the various scenarios? How can we newly build and structure our work so that quick pivots are baked in and expected? How do we accomplish our goals in collaboration with others? And how are we preparing financially for this new landscape? The recommendations in the ARC final report provide you with guiding questions like these and more to give you and your teams a jumping off point for creating a plan. At Ingenuity, We too are embedding radical flexibility into all aspects of our work. For the first time, we're collecting data for the 1920 school year in the fall. We began that data collection last month in September, and the official deadline for schools is actually today. So if you're out there in your school, make sure you complete your survey. Because of all of the learning interruptions caused by COVID-19 during the last school year, scores for that last school year will not be released publicly. The data collected for that school year will be limited to the time prior to the end of in-classroom instruction. Outlook Map and the CPS school report cards will be publicly indicate inability to rate at this point, but we'll be privately sharing that data with schools to help them inform their local school decisions. To meet the needs of our rapidly evolving sector, we're also releasing our annual catalog on a quarterly basis. Many of you might have already seen we pushed out our first quarter catalog a couple of weeks ago. This approach will allow us to remain flexible in our programming and offer an opportunity for both planned and spontaneous events based on significant topics and areas of need that continue to emerge over the next year. Our professional learning programs quickly pivoted to a virtual format in the spring, and we continue to plan a variety of online and virtual trainings to meet those evolving needs, including an online virtual summit coming up later this month. We're also excited to share that we've developed new and internal creative school fund support structures that reinforce this new and changing landscape in schools and reflect the need for more flexible funding, including a rolling application deadline, which should be really exciting for many of you. We're also collecting and analyzing data quickly and often to get all of us actionable information when we need it. The second guiding principle is knowledge sharing and professional learning. The needs of students, teachers, schools, and organizations are rapidly changing in this new landscape. And the gaps in our knowledge, they're there, right? We have opportunities for greater collaboration. Connection, resources, and support at this time are really vital. So how are we going to do this? We'll do it by exploring how the arts can be a tool for recovery from crisis, whether that's as a healing practice, as an avenue for reconnecting after separation, as a spark for protest or change, and as an antidote to the challenges that students, teachers, schools, and our organizations have faced during this first half of 2020. We need to learn how to truly embrace both trauma-informed practices and an equity mindset in our work to meet students where they are. While these have been areas of growing practice and understanding in recent years, trauma-informed practice isn't a new term to many of us, we must commit to actually changing our practice through continual reflection, applied learning, and continuous quality improvement. And we can't do it alone. We have to show up for each other, even in a virtual space, to build a broader base of understanding and responsiveness. Are your staff prepared to deliver programs in this adjusted environment? Do you have an articulated process and protocol for tailoring programs to unique school needs and assets? Do you have professional learning plans in place for all members of your team? And how are you ensuring that key organizational decision makers are also participating in training at this time? Knowledge sharing and professional learning has always been a key anchor for Ingenuity's work from the beginning, and we're looking forward to deepening this work both internally and externally. The Creative Schools Fund scope is expanding to provide more learning and arts connection opportunities for teachers this year. And the PPL team has already released a 3-part training on trauma-informed practices, and we're really excited about a very close launch to a multi-month initiative aimed at building trauma-informed knowledge and practice and art-specific curriculum, lessons, and pedagogy. Last year, we launched our professional learning quiz on our website, and we'll continue to map our trainings and resources to help you and your teams both identify training needs and create a pathway for actually filling gaps within the learning. Each year, we ask schools to complete the Creative School Survey, as you know, the deadline today. And we'll continue, the data, I should say, yields a ton of incredibly important information for all of us. This year, we're excited to begin the development of an arts partner survey to ensure that we have an accurate and up-to-date understanding of arts partners, of you and your important role in CPS. There are also exciting developments in store on the back end of Outlook, learning portals for both CPS teachers and for arts partners. Connection is so important now, and we'll continue to listen to you to understand and respond to your needs with opportunities and collective challenges. The final guiding principle is equity. To commit to racial justice, economic parity, and human dignity, we must understand exactly where we stand in the work of eliminating racism within our organizations, within our schools, within the district, and outside of them, in order to effectively partner in the work of arts education equity. The only way we can do this is by joining together in the movement for human dignity, prioritizing student agency, powering student-led change, and placing student voice as a key driver of our work. We must interrogate our capacity to meaningfully meet the needs of students and the communities in which we work, to evaluate how we enter into community partnerships and what we can authentically do in a high-quality way, and with whom. To continue to close the gap on access to arts education for every student in every grade requires an explicit understanding of the intersections of our work with racial justice, economic parity, and human dignity. Do your programs decenter whiteness? Are they culturally responsive? Are you committed to undoing racism and economic disparities in programs, in your policies, in your communications, and your operations? Are you investing in BIPOC leaders at all levels of your organization? And are you strategically using the available contact information from Outlook Map, or are you sending blast emails to arts liaisons just hoping to make a connection? Ingenuity's work, our mission, is about equity and access. And last year, as part of a strategic planning process, we developed a goal of developing a racial equity culture and being more committed, more knowledgeable, and more skilled in ableism, analyzing race, racism, race equity, and placing those issues at the forefront of our organizational and operational strategy. Next month, we'll begin a 14-month partnership with the Morton Group to guide us through this process. We're eager to begin this work and to share what we learn with you. In advance of this commitment, however, we're immediately implementing several changes to our work. As you've heard a bit about already, and I've already kind of alluded to, the Creative School Fund has developed new guidelines. And though the role of the fund holds steady, the fund has been designed for maximum flexibility that supports district, partner, and teacher needs. Our data practices continue to evolve too. We've added recently questions to the Outlook Partner Portal to help us better understand the arts education BIPOC landscape, the assets and the needs, as well as sector supports. We're currently exploring with CPS the possibility of integrating creative school certification scores into the district school accountability system, the School Quality Rating Policy, the SQRP. This would be an important change in ensuring that every child in every grade and every school has access to the arts as part of their education, and we'll need your input on this. Steve is going to speak more about that later in his breakout session. And in our advocacy work, we'll also be centered on training and preparing you as advocates. We will all benefit from greater numbers of folks, especially young people and youth, working together to ensure that arts education is funded equitably. The Department of Arts Education and Ingenuity continue to work together and alongside schools and partners to support the sector in this really challenging time. The release of both the ARC final report and CPS's remote learning guidance, authored in parallel, provide some vision, direction, and tangible recommendations for how we can all collectively navigate our next steps together. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Director of Arts Education at CPS, Julia de Betancourt, to speak about that guidance and her vision for moving forward. Hi, Julia, welcome.
Thanks, Nicole. Good morning, everybody. It is wonderful to see so many of you. It feels like a long time since we've been together, and I am grateful for any space, even virtual, that brings us together around our shared passion for arts education. I want to personally thank Ingenuity for their responsiveness and their partnership today and every day since 2011. We are lucky to work alongside you. I also want to start by personally thanking you. The strength of so many of our systems has been tested over the last 7 months, and I am deeply grateful to all of our arts partners for continuing to demonstrate your deep commitment to the children of Chicago, even amidst challenging circumstances. As Nicole referenced, we have entered an unprecedented space together. From the entire DAE staff, we appreciate all of your engagement with us. Thank you for engaging in ARC. Thank you for emailing us about an issue. Thank you for sharing your candid feedback. We also appreciate your patience as we work through finding you the answers that we need if we don't have them for you. Here is some of what has happened as a result of our collective work. As a district, we have released hundreds of pages of guidance and launched dozens of professional learning modules to support our school communities and our partners during this time. Over 100 pages of that guidance is directly related to arts education, and that document will continue to be updated and available to the public with the latest updates that we have. As you heard Nicole mention, we've also adjusted our granting streams to be as flexible to our schools and our partners as possible. The Arts Essentials grants made by the Department of Arts Education to schools are now pushed out within days of their survey completion rather than at the end of that engagement. We've also flexed granting guidelines to allow for purchases that support remote learning, like instructional technology and more. We are also excited about the Creative Schools Fund grants that are happening this year that you'll hear more about from Eli, Ola, and Chief Chavarria. There are 3 new areas of funding to support innovative and restorative arts education programming through the years. I recognize that CPS is a complex system, and there are still outstanding operational issues. We commit to continuing to support you in problem solving and encourage your rapid and honest feedback about what you are experiencing in the field. Thank you for being our eyes and ears in classrooms, and we will do our best to answer your questions as quickly as possible. As you'll soon hear from Chief Shirley Chavarria, CPS continues to focus not only on the immediate challenges facing us in 2020, but on the horizon, on the longitudinal work that knits us all together, strengthening the instructional experience for all students and preparing them to be successful in whatever path they choose for themselves. I am pleased to share just a few of the strategies that we're working on. First, I want to highlight that the entire Office of Teaching and Learning now has an office-wide strategic plan that encompasses all content areas. Arts is considered an equal partner in this plan, alongside our peers in literacy, STEM, social science, physical education, and more. We are focused on building and executing a shared instructional vision that Chief Chavarria will talk more about. Alongside Ingenuity, our team is also doubling down on our work in advancing equity in arts education in Chicago. Key initiatives include the Curriculum Equity Initiative. The Department of Arts Education has been working with national arts education consultants and over 30 CPS teachers to develop a scope and sequence in dance, music, theater, and visual arts, with media arts standards integrated throughout. This PK through 12 resource will contain between 6 and 10 unit overviews, depending on your grade level or high school course respectively, and will include art standards addressed, student learning objectives, and unit assessments. Our professional learning team continues to grow the breadth and the depth of our offerings, with our exemplary teacher leaders, the arts instruction specialists, as our key thought partners. we have grown our discipline and grade band specific professional learning, and we saw a 46% increase in unique participants last year. We're working on early college and career opportunities for our students. Our advanced arts program is seeing some of the highest rates of enrollment in many years, and nearly all of our courses now have a dual credit equivalent with our City College partner. Our department has renewed our supports to our 70 fine and performing arts schools, including making additional micro grants this year to support ensuring access to the arts during remote learning, building unique PLCs for educators in these schools, and working across the Office of Teaching and Learning to build shared strategy for schools, regardless of whether you're a fine and performing arts school, a STEM school, or something else entirely. We are also moving forward with our dance teacher residency alongside our talent department, and we're hoping to enroll our first group of residents next summer to enable them to become certified CPS dance teachers in just a short time. And then there's ESSA. Just prior to the world changing in February, the Illinois State Board of Education made a historic vote to add weight to the arts indicator in the state's Every Student Succeeds Act, and we became the first state to do so. CPS has worked to be a strong advocate during this 3-year-long process because we believe in the arts and we believe in the long-term impact of a quality arts education on our students as they move into career and their life. And now I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Shirley Chavarria. She is a bilingual urban school leader with 10 years of experience serving as an educator and administrator focused on equity and access at the classroom, school, and the district level. She has served as a principal, a teacher, and most recently the Deputy Chief of Teaching and Learning, all within CPS. She knows firsthand how to build and sustain a strong arts education program during her tenure at Nixon Elementary School. And as a leader at schools and now in teaching and learning, she prioritizes building trust while developing a shared instructional vision, working on improving operational excellence, and strengthening relationships with community partners like all of you. We are lucky to be working alongside her, and I am so pleased now to introduce Dr. Shirley Chavarria to share some remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia, for that generous introduction and for the work that your team continues to do. Good morning, everyone. It's truly my pleasure to be joining you today. And since this is the first time that I've had the opportunity to connect with many of you, I wonder if you'll indulge me in allowing me to share with you more about who I am as a leader. All of the things that Julia stated are true and important, but in this time when all of the boundaries between work, school, and home are broken, and when the conflicts and challenges of the moment require a fullness of presence that's really never been demanded before, I want to share with you more about who I am as a person and how I show up as a leader. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Nicaragua. My family came to this country illegally, and eventually we were granted political asylum. I'm a first-generation college student, and I'm proud to say a Stanford graduate. I'm also a wife. My wife is a special education teacher in Chicago public schools. And I'm also a mother to a son with very complex learning needs. All of these parts of my identity challenge me to show up every day as a leader and ask myself, does this district make all students and all members of our community feel welcome, feel safe, and feel valued the way I do, the way I desire my son to be, and the way I see my wife strive to do every day with her own students? This is what I ask myself every single day. And then I ask myself, are we meeting the needs of our students and guaranteeing them an academic experience that will ensure them success in college, career, and civic life? As I'll elaborate on later, in Chicago Public Schools and as the Chief of Teaching and Learning, we are elevating the belief and commitment that identity, relationship, and community have to center us. Today, I share these parts of my identity with you to build relationship and continue to strengthen our community in this unprecedented time. As you all well know, the 2021 school year is unprecedented. We've had to maintain radical flexibility in our approach to teaching and learning. We've shifted from planning a hybrid learning model to 100% online, while also planning for a potential return to in-person teaching in some way, shape, or form. And I greatly appreciate Ingenuity's responsiveness in bringing the arts sector together to grapple with the challenges in front of us. CPS was pleased to support Ingenuity and many of you in the months-long convening of the Arts Ed Response Collective. Julie and I sat on the advisory committee, allowing us to work with you towards devising a framework to move the arts education sector forward. We recognize that the arts will help our students move through, process, and recover from the trauma that the last 7 months have brought them and all of us. Disproportionate effects of COVID-19 on their families and communities, the disproportionate impact of the economic fallout of COVID, and the ongoing struggle for racial justice in an anti-racist country are all needs and demands that are being placed upon our students that we must address together. And while this moment has called upon us to be responsive and nimble, it also demands that we clarify and double down on our core values and commitments, and that we commit once again to ensuring that all students have the kinds of learning experiences we know they deserve, regardless of circumstance. There are still things that ground our shared work. Success starts here, continues to provide the foundation for our collective work. Despite the uncertainty in front of us, we must remain committed to academic progress. We must remain focused on high-quality, rigorous instruction as a core commitment for all students. And we remain resolute in knowing that a commitment to equity means ensuring that every student accesses quality learning experiences, hybrid, in-person, at home, or remote. Additionally, all of our core values as a district continue to drive our decisions in this unprecedented time. We particularly heavily rely on our commitment to continuous learning as we begin to imagine what school can look like. Through investing in continuous learning of adults across our district, our teachers and leaders will have to engage in the practices, reflect on their learning, and grow new ways to best support our students through at-home or in-learning. And we see examples of this across the district. Our teachers are leading their peers through professional learning sessions on new kinds of instructional technology, leveraging our prioritized learning standards to rethink the artistic process in the digital space, or really considering how to unpack the social and emotional learning needs of our students and weave that through a music composition unit. Our educators are stepping up to the challenges of this moment and meeting it in unprecedented ways. In addition to our 5-year vision, the CPS Equity Framework will continue to push our thinking as we consider the inequities and the opportunity gaps that may have widened over the last few months. I'm also excited to share with you that we have a new shared vision for what we want instruction to look like every day in every classroom in Chicago. When scholars typically talk about what defines instruction, they often articulate 3 things being at the core. Instruction is defined by the teacher and their pedagogical moves. Then we talk about the student and how they're engaged in learning. And finally, scholars talk about the content that teachers and students engage in. This is typically represented by a triangle or a pyramid and called the instructional core. But in Chicago public schools, we think that there's more at play. In Chicago public schools, we want to create a vision for instruction that leverages a culturally sustaining and responsive educational approach rooted in equity and centered on identity, relationships, and community. Our commitment to equity also informs our instructional vision. For students to have equitable opportunity to learn, their racial, ethnic, and linguistic identities must be honored and reflected in their curriculum, and their own identities as learners strengthened and affirmed. Their communities need to be respected and treated as partners and as sources of knowledge. and trusting relationships between teachers and students, among peers, and between the school and the community it serves must be forged and nurtured. This is our shared goal, to educate for equity every day. But knowing what this looks like is tricky. We'll have to prioritize understanding our students' lived experiences and invite them to bring all of themselves into the art classroom. We have to take the time to build trust. This may mean a reevaluation of the curriculum to better reflect the identities and values of your students, an adjusted instructional approach that asks students to take more ownership over the creative process, or ensuring that there are multiple ways for students to assess students and allow them to authentically demonstrate their knowledge through a performance task. But regardless of the way instruction occurs in the future, and more importantly, how it occurs in the present, Chicago Public Schools and my team will continue to support robust instruction in the arts and the creative process required to deliver it. We know that one of the most creative ways to enhance the arts education offerings for our students is the continued partnership and collaboration with you, our arts partners. In the 2018-2019 school year, 95% of our schools had at least one arts partnership, and there were 522 active arts partners according to Artlook. 522 partners invested in improving arts education. 522 partners worked towards more equitable access and high-quality arts education for our CPS students. CPS values these partnerships tremendously. Our students and teachers are better for them, and I personally thank you. You are amazing. I know we are asking a lot of you right now, and we appreciate deeply your willingness to work with us. We're working hard to provide additional guidance on the questions you have and working with you to create a sustainable model for these times. Now more than ever, that must be the most used phrase in 2020, our students and teachers need you. We are committed to delivering the arts to our students in new and creative ways. I am so impressed with the way the partner community has pivoted to create new and enriching experiences and content for our students. We all know that arts education inspires creative thinking and problem-solving skills. You have definitely demonstrated this in the way you have evolved new ways to enhance the art curriculum for our students. Thank you for your unwavering commitment. We know that for you to be able to continue to provide programs, you need the support of the district. Julia and her team at the Departments of Arts Education are working tirelessly, constantly searching for new and better ways to support our teachers, new and better ways to support our students, new and better ways to support our arts partners. They created the school year 21 Arts Education Remote Learning Guidance, 104 ever-evolving pages of support and guidance for our teachers, including art partner recommendations. We know that one guidance document cannot be the panacea and that there are ongoing operational challenges. Please continue to elevate these to us, and we commit to working as quickly as possible to resolve those challenges. We strive to be reflective leaders, and whenever we're able, course correct in response to your feedback. For example, with regards to the Arts Partner RFQ, we heard you and the advocates. The timeline was too short. DAE partnered with Ingenuity and the CPS Office of Procurement to extend the Partner RFQ deadline and add information sessions, Procurement 101 sessions, and hopefully reducing some of the burdens on you. We are looking now towards an unpredictable future, not only for arts education, but the arts sector at large. CPS will continue to push the bounds of innovation, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate with the arts partner community as we explore the art of the possible together. Our children need the arts. Let's continue to work to deliver more equitable, high-quality opportunities to them. Thank you for your time and for welcoming me this morning.
Thank you so much, Chief and Julia, for those words. Really inspiring and so great to hear a little bit more about your own background, Chief. That's really wonderful. So we've got some time here to engage with the Chief and with Julia to get some of your questions answered. Can you talk to us, Julia, a little bit about how you went about creating the remote learning guidance?
Certainly. The remote learning guidance was part of a whole suite of resources that the district worked to create in advance of the 2021 school year. And one of the key components that we used to ground so many of those documents were the school year 2021 6 instructional priorities. So those are 6 guiding principles that are agnostic of content area and really critical needs that Chief Chavarria and our whole team felt like needed to be pushed to the top of all of our agendas. Things like social emotional learning, increasing the relevance of instruction. And those 6 are not only described at the top about how we're discussing them for all artistic disciplines, but then pulled all the way through and broken down by artistic discipline. And so we really wanted to use those 6 instructional priorities in both our all arts recommendations, but also getting really specific for our educators and our partners. We also wanted to make sure that there were sections for the school leader who was thinking about how to make schedules and budgets work in this new space. And we also wanted to have a section devoted to our arts partnerships. And that section has grown and grown as we've gotten more and more recommendations and heard more from the field that, hey, this is happening and we need to know how to access Google Meets in this way, or I have questions about tiering, and I'm sure we'll hear some of that come up in our hot topics.
Questions about tiering have provided many tiers.
Excellent pun. But we also, wanted to make sure that we had all those sections really clearly built so that we could use this document to expand and contract as was needed by the field at any given time.
Great, thanks, Julia. I've got another question. We've got some questions coming in here that we're going to turn to in a moment, but I think it would also be helpful for our audience, for the partners, to hear a little bit about what your team is hearing the largest challenges right now are for our arts teachers. What are they facing? What are they really grappling with? And how do you think the partner community can help and assist in those areas?
We're hearing a lot from the field, and really, we've taken a bit of a Maslow before Bloom approach to some of this. So making sure that teachers feel comfortable with logging on, engaging their students, with building structures and systems into their day that become predictable, and so students can really feel safe and secure before they're asked to engage, more instructionally. So some of those things that are facing our teachers are about those operational challenges, about organizing their Google Classrooms, about making sure that students can engage with them day to day. But then it's about how to translate authentic arts experiences to a remote platform and make sure that students are still getting to be the creative decision makers that we would see them be in a traditional classroom setting, while recognizing that naturally that can't just immediately and perfectly translate. So helping them to negotiate how to make some tough choices about what they prioritize. I think our learning standards offer a lot of interesting opportunity there when we moved away from learning standards that were really about product-based learning or specific knowledge and skills, and really asking arts teachers to think about the full creative process, seeking to find opportunities like that to move on those connecting and responding standards just as much as we would rely on those creating and producing standards.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And we know, just shout out to all of our CPS teachers who are working so hard right now, trying to figure all of this out. It is a lot. So we've got another question coming in here about the synchronous and the asynchronous learning and the thinking behind the 30 minutes for synchronous learning and the 30 minutes of asynchronous learning. Julia, can you or the chief kind of speak to that thinking and how that was decided?
Hey, Julia, I think I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay,
I can
great.
hear you.
Yeah.
Apologies, I'm going to stay off camera for the sake of not losing connectivity again. I'll give a level overview of the thinking around the 30 minutes and how it was split. Number one of the pieces of feedback that we received in the spring that we heard loud and clear was that by not setting minimum content area thresholds, schools showed a lot of variability in how they did or did not prioritize instructional time across disciplines. And so we wanted to get that right in the fall by being very clear and specific about how instructional time should be allocated and to ensure that it reflected the commitments that we had long established as a district in terms of the place of the arts in the instructional day, particularly at the elementary school. And so number one, we knew we wanted to protect that 60-minute space as an instructional time dedicated for the arts and other other disciplines such as physical education and health. Then I will say that the division of synchronous and asynchronous time is not a science, it is an art. It truly is. And, we continue to consume all of the research and early thinking around this. And what we wanted to be sure is that number one, arts time was not just asynchronous time. We're in a time where students deserve and must receive direct and live instruction in all disciplines. And so we knew that we wanted synchronous time. But we also know that in the typical elementary school schedule, it's a 60-minute block, and asking students to attend for 60 minutes without interruption could also be developmentally inappropriate. And so the best thinking at this time was to divide that time up into two blocks by the middle, right? 30 minutes for dedicated instruction and 30 minutes for asynchronous time. I have been really clear in elevating that asynchronous time alone time or work that is disconnected from the teacher. Last week, I had the opportunity to observe a fabulous music teacher at an elementary school who beautifully led students through a small mini lesson with tons of singing and active movement. And then she used a Nearpod deck to then allow the students to work independently during the asynchronous time. She stayed online. Students came in and asked her questions. She retaught concepts or heard students practice. And so that asynchronous time was really fluid in terms of students' decision around whether they wanted to work independently, separate from her, or if they wanted to continue to engage her. And to me, that is one of the most strong examples of how we can think about that division of synchronous and asynchronous. But again, none of this is a hard science, and we continue to engage. Julie and her team continue to hear feedback from the art community around how we can meaningfully use this time and make sense of this truly unprecedented ask that's upon all of us in the field of education. Julie, I don't know if you want to add any thoughts.
No, I appreciate that, Shirley. I think my only addition is that we know that there's a lot of, teachers who would maybe provide a demonstration and then release students to something that more looked like studio time. And I appreciate that we can be flexible with the different definition of synchronous and asynchronous and give teachers the flexibility to think about what that would look like authentically in their classroom. And so working with individual teachers to help them think through that is been one of the most wonderful challenges that we've had to really think about that pedagogically and practically at the same time.
Thank you. Great. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and we have a question about the dance teacher residency. And so a little bit of information for those of us out there who are already movement teachers, already potentially have some background in the art form itself. What are some of the requirements of that program, and what does that look like as it rolls out over the next year?
Well, thank you for that. We're really excited about this partnership with our talent office and with university partners to begin to grow something that we've known has been a need in the state for a long time. Dance teachers are often one of the most requested artistic disciplines, and we're excited to work with all of you to make that happen. Really, in terms of recruitment, that will be working with our talent office who manage all of our teacher residency programs. And the program is flexed to allow for someone like a teaching artist or someone with professional background to be handled on a case-by-case basis. So if you're interested in learning more, teacher residency at cps.edu will be the best place to ask your specific questions about you or any colleagues that you might have who might be a good fit for this program. And I can make sure to follow up with some of that in writing in that FAQ document we're going to send out.
Great. Thanks so much, Julia. Another question coming in here about the CPS tech security policy and how it's evolved over the past 7 months. Specific interest in how to best support student and family security while working virtually. This has been a hot topic for many of our arts partners, really kind of finding the platform challenge that we're having and how mandated reporting potentially has shifted, if at all. What do you got on that? That's a big one to unpack.
Yes, it is a big one to unpack. So number one, data security and students' safety continues to be a priority for the district and has been a real driving force in terms of some of the decisions that we have made. We, as is I think has been wide known, in the spring allowed for a little bit more variety in terms of the platforms being used, but this fall most definitely moved towards uplifting Google Suites and Google Meet particularly as our district's platform for synchronous instruction. It is the preferred platform for volunteer interactions with students and vendor interactions with students. And that's because we have a contract with Google, we have a data share agreement with Google, and so we are better able to monitor those concerns around security and student safety. While we do not have the same for Zoom or those other platforms, and so as a district, we don't feel comfortable speaking to the security or non-security of those other platforms. So again, that is why we have moved towards Google Meet as our preferred platform. In terms of mandated reporting, I think it's really important to be clear that mandated reporting requirements come as state statute, and those have not changed whatsoever. And so those who are mandated reporters continue to have that expectation and must fulfill it. What we have done, though, which is a local district policy, is that we have updated our standards for professional conduct. And that is the document that rules how staff particularly can engage with students. We updated that this fall, have rolled out associated training with that, particularly addressing concerns about whether or not students can interact one-to-one virtually with their teacher. And we've established a procedure to do that. As many of you know, we also continue to evolve our guidance around volunteer and vendor engagement with students, and have had multiple trainings around the vendor tiers. I know that we've already alluded to that, but all of that truly driven by two main guiding district policies, the standards of professional conduct and our acceptable use platform, or acceptable use policy.
Great, thank you, Chief. So we've got a question here. It's a little bit of a technicality issue, Julia. The remote guidance document has a ton of different links in it. Can you just talk about the firewall and what partners can and can't access and why that is?
Sure. So yes, the remote learning guidance is available to all of our communities. So it's being accessed by teachers, it's being accessed by principals, it's being accessed by arts partners. We've seen access from out of state, which has been really exciting to start to engage with other districts a little bit. But some of those links are internal to CPS, and that might mean that there's specifics that are needed for a principal audience or a teacher audience that are not necessarily directed at our arts partner community. If there's a resource you are wishing for access to that you do not find is available to you, please feel free to reach out to us at artsvendors@cps.edu and ask us about what you're trying to access, and we can handle those on a case-by-case basis. There are hundreds of links in that document, so I'm sorry that I can't speak very specifically to one over the other, but we're happy to hear from you that you are wishing to have access to something and finding that you can't because it's only available to a cps.edu audience.
Thanks, Julie, for that clarity. Okay, let's switch it up and talk now about everybody's favorite subject, the Arts Partner RFQ, and what the benefits are for partners who already have, let's say, their tier status and a vendor ID number.
So I'm going to ask that questions about the Arts Partner RFQ actually get directed to our Office of Procurement. I know that that's a disappointing answer to hear from me, but it's important to maintain the integrity of an active procurement process. So we can follow up with some of the language in our FAQ document that procurement has already released. And you can follow up with individual questions to our procurement buyer, whose name is Jasmine Banks. Again, I recognize this is such a challenging time when we're in an active procurement process that the Department of Arts Education can't speak openly about those things, but it's to maintain the integrity of a formal procurement process, and the district has strict restrictions that enable us to do that. So there are definitely benefits that we shared at the pre-submittal. There's an FAQ document available at cps.edu/procurement that you can download that'll address some of that. And we do hope all of our arts partners consider applying for this opportunity.
Great, thanks, Julia. I think it's also helpful to hear why you can't really speak to this process. It really is because of the ethical and kind of legal restrictions upon your department for this specific ask. Okay, another question coming in here is about access, I really think, and how to kind of get a program to teachers. So an organization has an effective PD chosen for a TED Talk here that can get quick focus during remote learning. How do they reach more of those teachers and administrators through CPS and through us at Ingenuity? And who do we connect with? And how can arts partners become a part of that?
So thank you for that question, and congratulations on being chosen for a TED Talk. That's pretty great. Ingenuity and DAE are all running a significant amount of professional learning during the year. Ingenuity continues to provide an embarrassment of riches in terms of what is available. If you'd like to share more with us about what professional learning you're offering, you are welcome to email cpsarts@cps.edu. That's going to be the best way for our team to direct your call and for us to consider whether we might have a professional learning stream that's available that this might fit well into. You also can use the Artlook map. I would really encourage partners to go to chicago.artlookmap.com and update your offerings, or search for schools. The new search features that I know Steve is going to talk about will make it even easier for you to find schools that are looking for professional learning in a specific area. And that can be a really powerful search engine to not just email, as Nicole said, the entire district, hoping that someone responds, but rather to say, hey, I saw that you're asking for this, and we actually have something that fits. So both of those options, if you'd like to reach out to us, we're happy to evaluate whether something is a good fit, but really also want to empower you to use that Artlook tool to do some searches that will find you arts schools, you're the arts partners that are interested in your services. Attending the summit, which will also move forward this fall, is another great way for you to do some of that speed dating to find some schools that might be interested.
Julia, you took almost all of the things that I was going to say as well. Same thing. And I would also say the virtual learning library is another exciting tool that Ingenuity has developed over the last 6 months to bring your virtual programs and offerings even more clearly in front of CPS teachers. So the virtual learning library is also something I would recommend that you create this resource on and kind of upload your resource to. Okay. So here we've got another question. We've just got a few minutes left of this section. So if you've got any burning questions, we'll try to answer them all. For the Tier 1 approved vendors, do teaching artists need to be fingerprinted?
So the continued need for fingerprinting still stands in the remote space. I know many of you worked through the background check refresh with us, and we again asked for your patience as we moved through that, but that does continue to be a need. If you're going to be engaging with students virtually, if you are a vendor employee, that same process does apply for new teaching artists who have not yet been fingerprinted for your organization. Our safety and security team has worked to continue to be responsive to those challenges. They have not forgotten some of those issues that you so generously raised when this first happened with the background check refresh, and they are continuing to innovate with solutions to make background checks easier in the virtual space.
Great. And this will be our last question of this portion of the session here. And I think this is directed towards the Chief. Chief Shirley made comments regarding a truly student-centered curriculum where students' identity in the arts would play a significant role. Is there something that is already being implemented? Is there PD offered on how to go about it and how specifically it relates to the arts role?
Yeah, and thank you for that question. Number one, I want to say that achieving that vision is going to be a long and shared journey, and not something that we just flip the switch. And there are lots of ways where we're advancing that vision immediately. As Julia mentioned, one of the most exciting places where I think that we're elevating that vision is in the Curriculum Equity Initiative and the work that's being done around the arts curriculum, which is truly being grounded in the ideas and values that I elevated today. Second, our instructional priorities and the associated learning that's taking place this summer and this fall are also grounded in the vision and begin to provide educators with a beginning view into what it can look like to live this kind of instructional experience with students. In this year, we will be looking to provide also very, very structured and specific professional development around culturally sustaining practices. And then I will allow Julia to see if there are any other art-specific opportunities that you'd like to elevate here.
I think you hit the big ones that I wanted to make sure we mentioned. But if there are other learning demands that you feel as an arts partner that you'd like to see the district address related to that, or that you'd like to hear Ingenuity do more about, we're always open to hearing about that. So please know that we're always listening and want to be responsive to your needs.
Great. So thank you, Shirley, Chief Shirley and Julia, for your insight here. This has been incredibly valuable. And Chief Shirley and Julia, we know how much you have going on right now and how many competing priorities there are. So we're truly grateful that you took the time to be with us this morning. It means quite a lot to us. And with that, Tasha, actually, yes, thank you for advancing to the breakout slide. So we are going to now be transitioning into a brief break. Give yourself a little bit of a stretch here. And at 10:50, we're going to ask you to reconvene by choosing a breakout session. Tash, go to the next slide. What you're going to do is actually navigate away from this webinar into a separate meeting. Courtney is going to be placing these links in the chat so you know where to go. And at the conclusion of those sessions, we're going to all reconvene back here into the webinar. Those sessions, again, will begin promptly at 10:50 and last approximately a half an hour. So you've got some choices here if you want to hear a little bit more about what's going on with our data research and how to use the new features on Outlook Map, as well as a little bit more about that SQRP that we mentioned, that I mentioned at the top of the program. I'd advise you go to that session. If you're curious and want to hear a little bit more about the Creative Schools Fund, some of those changes in the application details, if you've got a specific question about a program that you might want to offer with schools, we'd advise that you attend that session. And then finally, we've got a really great option here, a mini advocacy workshop with our colleagues from the Arts Alliance Illinois. Jonathan Vanderbrug will be helping to run that session, giving you a quick upload on how to be the best advocate that you can be. So before we do that, and before we transition into this break, I'm going to ask Tosh to go back a couple of slides. And we are really excited to share with you, to carry us into our break, a video that was created by our colleagues at Sen Arts. The title of this video is Who Will Carry Me? It's a very visual art piece from the Sen Arts community where more than 30 Sen students join their teachers and Sen alumni to create an original music and choreographed video that promotes connection and healing, especially now during remote learning. It's about a 4-minute video that reminds us, despite physical distance, we are not alone. So after you get done watching this video, please choose one of those breakout sessions and report by 10:50, and we'll see everybody on the flip side of that. Thank you. Amazing. All the feels for sure. Sessions begin in 2 minutes. Remember to come back here when we are done. We'll see you on the flip side. Thank you.